Unfortunately, Jacqueline Jenkins, our executive director, is under the weather. She was going to be here to introduce Mallorie Dunn, but she asked me to do this on her behalf. She extends her sincerest apologies and has asked me to welcome Mallorie Dunn. Mallorie Dunn is a New York City-based professor, fashion designer, and consultant. She is a Fashion Institute of Technology and Pratt Institute alumna who worked in the junior sector of corporate fashion before deciding to switch to freelance work. During that time, she was able to launch her customizable, inclusive, sustainable clothing line, Smart Glamour, in 2014. Mallorie is also an adjunct professor at FIT, who currently teaches for both the fashion design and continuing education departments. Her courses include sewing, draping, pattern making, small business entrepreneurship, and inclusive design. Today, we are welcoming Mallorie with thanks as she discusses an important topic on how societal fatphobia has sustainability issues within the fashion industry. In this talk, she will cover overproduction by the numbers, the reality of U.S. customers, ethical fashion access issues, and actions we can all take to correct these problems. We welcome Mallorie and thank you for coming.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for coming. I'm going to step out here a little bit. I'm not trapped behind a podium. Yes, thank you so much for coming to Intersectional Sustainability, Why Fatphobia is a Sustainability Issue. This event is part of Sustainability Awareness Week. I am on the Sustainability Council. So this is something that's incredibly important to me. But prior to joining FIT as a professor 3 years ago, as Christina mentioned, I ran my company Smart Glamour, in which literally this topic is what I talked about all the time, and is one of the most important reasons of what started my company. So to start today, I'm showing you a quote that is actually from me from an interview that I did at some point, but it really kind of just the main synopsis of this whole talk, which is that you cannot change the industry or affect overall meaningful change within the larger fashion landscape if you are leaving out the majority of humans. You just cannot. Then just a quick little background for folks who are not familiar with me. As Christina said, I graduated from both FIT and Pratt Institute with degrees in fashion design and then art and design education. I worked in corporate fashion for the junior sector as both an associate designer and then a technical designer. I then launched my company Smart Glamour in 2014, through which I produced 14 inclusive runway shows, 50 collections, and hosted 13 pop-up shops and trunk shows, which were for all sizes. This is just a very quick look at Smart Glamour. You're welcome to look into it further if you're so interested. But it's a sustainably, ethically made clothing line. The size range was extra, extra small through 15X and beyond. I say and beyond because the clothing was customizable. So even if you are smaller than that, larger than that, in between it didn't matter. I would make clothing for you. We have a organic social media reach of 30K. I curated a database of 180 plus models. A lot of Smart Glamour models would come back to model for me time and time again. So we created a little bit of a community there. And it was just like a really lovely safe space for everyone. I conducted ongoing size and measurement resources, and I shared that data freely with other small business owners and with my followers online. And Smart Glamour has been featured by Forbes, Wall Street Journal, Teen Vogue, 17, Oxygen, PBS, Bustle, Buzz, HuffPost, BuzzFeed, Upworthy, and more. So I wanted to find a definition for sustainability. And sustainability is one of those buzzwords that is kind of overreaching and general, and everyone kind of takes a different definition and different meaning with it. And I really liked this definition, which is from the UCLA Sustainability Committee, and it reads, the integration of environmental health, social equity, and economic vitality in order to create thriving, healthy, diverse, and resilient communities for this generation and generations to come. The practice of sustainability recognizes how these issues are interconnected and requires a systems approach and an acknowledgement of complexity. So the reason that I really gravitated towards this specific definition of sustainability, especially when it comes to this talk, is that it mentions that it's not just, simply doing things to sustain the environment. It's also doing things to sustain social equity with people and economic vitality. And then it recognizes that that's a very complex thing to do. And in order to do it well, you have to really look at it from a systemic approach. So from all angles. You can't just put a Band-Aid on one thing and say you're done. So here are some not so happy facts about sustainability when it comes to the fashion industry. So the first is honestly maybe one of the most shocking things to me every time I read it, which is that 30% of clothes that are made every year are never even sold. They just get discarded. Second thing is that because of that, but also because of just the waste that fashion creates, 92 million tons of textile waste are created every year. 60% of brands admit that overproduction is a huge or significant issue to them. And then tying in with kind of this first stat, we make 150 billion garments a year worldwide. Which, yes, I know. Which then means 50 billion of those garments are disposed of within the first year that they're made. So a third of them just get sold out, thrown out, whether they are purchased and thrown out or just thrown out because no one bought them. And lastly, 87% of materials used to make clothing end up at landfills annually. So, whole bunch of not good news. I apologize if you didn't know before. Yep. I don't know. It doesn't want to go. So, a little bit about numbers and revenue, right? So, U.S. women's clothing revenue in 2022 was $65.7 billion. The same year, the revenue of plus-size clothing for women was $12.6 billion. So, said in another way, overall, women's U.S. clothing sales that are plus-size was just 19% of the whole. It is estimated that plus-size shoppers have $46.4 billion to spend a year, but only 27% of that is actually being spent. Okay, so based on those stats that I just said, I would like a few people to guess, and if there's some folks in the audience who know the answer to this question, I'd rather you let some people guess. So if you are not sure, what percentage of U.S. women and femmes do you think wear plus sizes in the U.S., and then also men? If we just a few guesses. Yes. 26. Two more guesses. 63. 40%. Okay. 26, 40, 63. So 67 to 72% of women and femmes wear plus sizes, and 70% of men wear plus sizes. The average waist size of women and men, respectively, is 38 inches and 40 inches. 81% of plus-size shoppers say that they would spend more if they had more options. And 60% of consumers say they have a hard time finding their size. So, one of my favorite things to argue about on the internet with folks who do not think you should make plus-size clothes is that plus-size people are not a niche. They're not a niche customer. They are quite literally the opposite of that. And so I'm just popping up a quick definition of niche, which is denoting products, services, or interests that appeal to a small selection of the population. Now, as we just learned, plus-size folks are actually the majority of the population, and therefore they are not a niche market. And they should not be treated as such. So then I did a little bit of math and thinking about all of those numbers and how does that tie into sustainability and the issues that we brought up on the first slide. So If all of the $46.4 billion of plus-size spending power was spent, that would equal 70% of the clothing sales. So that would actually even out to the percentage of plus-size people that there are. Then, if we produce garments in direct correlation to the actual size of U.S. consumers, then that would mean that 100.5 billion of those 150 garments would be made in plus size. As of right now, percentage-wise, it's 28.5. So that leaves a difference of 72 billion right now. So it's possible, I'm not saying it absolutely would, but it's possible that that could help wipe out the 50 billion that does not sell. Now, I'm not saying that we should continue on making 150 billion garments a year. That's too much. But if all we did was make them in the right size, that would be a huge step of the way to reducing waste, right? Then, about the stat about 81% of plus-size shoppers said they would spend more. So I looked up, the population of the U.S., what percentage of that is adults, what percentage of that is women, therefore applied what number of those women are plus size. So if 70% of the U.S. women are plus size, that's 92.8 million women. If 81% of those women would spend more if they had more options, that means there are 75 million women who are underserved from the fashion industry. So, obviously that is a big problem. That is a fashion-wide problem. That is not just sustainable fashion, that's all fashion. But the next thing I want to focus on is how that problem continues and persists even within sustainable brands who, are focused on obviously sustainability, but also usually ethical production. They usually have better representation of models. They're really trying to do good things with the work that they're creating. Before I hop into the niche of sustainable brands, another thing I like to do is just give you an example of what happens if you are a plus-size person trying to go and look for clothes on a designer website. So this is Nordstrom, and I specifically went to their designer clothing section, not to their overall section. And in that section with no size filters, there are 9,494 items. When I click the size filters to just the plus sizes, that number drops to 350. That is 3.7% of the total amount, which is absolutely bonkers. So then, as I was mentioning about sustainable brands, so this is another thing that I do very often, and I like statistics, I like numbers, I like facts. I was on the math team. So whenever I'm on the internet and I see somebody make a listicle of sustainable brands, or they're like, try out this new company, etc., first thing I do is go look at what sizes they offer. Second thing I do is go look at their size chart. Third thing I do is complain to my husband about it. So I looked up a online sustainable magazine, and they had a listicle of 10 great sustainable brands. I went through, opened every single one, looked at what they offered size-wise, and then also looked at their size chart. So half of the 10 do not make clothes for the average size person, meaning they do not carry a waist measurement of 38 inches. 2 more, 38 inch waist is their largest size. So they get up to the average size person and they stop. One brand has 1 size above average, and 2 brands have 2 sizes above average, and that's it. So when we think about the average size waist being 38 inches, that's not all of plus size people, right? That's like just stepping your foot into plus size people. So really, 7 out of the 10 don't make plus size clothes. If you're making just enough for the average size person and then you're stopping, you're not taking advantage of the majority market that's here. So the next few slides are some more examples specifically from sustainable brands. And you'll notice that any place that it would have said their name, I have it blocked out. I'm not trying to start any kind of hate campaign against these brands. A lot of them are smaller. So that's not really the point of this. But my point is to show you how dedicated they are about sustainability, how much they talk about it on their websites, but then how much they are not serving the majority of people. So this is a company, obviously I'm not going to read this whole thing to you, but I underlined some important parts of this where they're talking about 100% organic cotton. They use ethical producers. They limit pesticides and toxic chemicals. They support women and minority-owned businesses in New York City. They produce locally in small batches. They require global organic textile standards. All so wonderful. Those are wonderful things. We should all aspire to do that with our companies. But this is their size chart. So their largest waist size is 34.5 inches, which, for a visual reference, is the size of my waist. So anyone larger than me cannot shop at this company. And the majority of people wear plus-size clothing, as I've already established. So they can't participate in this. They can't support a company that supports women and minority-owned businesses locally in New York City in small batches without toxic chemicals, right? So this is another one. This is a brand in Philadelphia. They talk a lot about extreme wastefulness, pollution, labor exploitation, sustainable fabrics, etc. And here's their size chart. Their largest waist size is 30 inches. So I can't wear their clothes. And then one last one. This is another company talking about minimizing our impact on the planet. They're part of the Fair Trade Federation. And also, one of my favorite things to bring up with sustainability is not harming people in addition to the planet. And they mentioned not harming people. And here's their size chart. And there's where the average size person fits. So they do go one little half size above that. But everything else that they make, the majority of the population cannot participate in. So, if that wasn't convincing enough, I decided to reach out to my personal customers, my plus-size customers specifically, and I asked them, what did you come to me to search out for me to make that you couldn't find somewhere else? The thing about being a company that makes clothes for everyone and means it is that a lot of people who feel very left out specifically find me. And my company is just me. I do not have funding. I do not do paid advertising. So these are folks who are doing everything they can to just find clothes that they want. And they are relying on a singular human working out of her studio in Brooklyn. So these are some things that they ordered from me that they couldn't find elsewhere. A sundress, a bralette, a plaid coat, a piratey wrap dress shirt. That was a little specific. Replicating a ripped crop top because she couldn't find another. A short dress with customizable length. Another wrap sweater. I was searching for ballet style things and I love it so much. A basic stretchy 3/4 sleeve crop top. I still have it 8 years later. Which is wonderful. Love to hear that. A robe in a cute pattern. I had only found solid color robes. A mock neck turtleneck in more than just basic colors. And a raincoat. Then this is a quick little pull quote from a larger email from a customer of mine. And actually the person writing this email is the husband. And he orders things for me for his wife. And I had made her 2 pairs of leggings. And once they got them, he wrote me this email saying, I just wanted to drop you a quick email thanking you for the leggings. We just received them, and my wife instantly put them on. I think she stated it was the first time in 3 years that she heard no stitching give when she put pants on. So when you are outside of what companies offer, you can't just walk around naked. You have to do the best with what you got, which often means you're squeezing yourself into things that are not your size. So every other time this woman has put on leggings, they were not actually made for her. She was not in mind. And very often, the seams would pop because they're too small. So for everyone here who is straight size, who has never had to struggle with finding a pair of leggings, one of the most basic garments. Please just keep in mind, especially if you're a designer or a fashion industry person in this room, that like everyone deserves access to basic clothing and fun clothing. So, also in case that wasn't enough reason, I wanted to show sales numbers. So these are direct sales from my company, and this first pie chart is a breakdown of the percentages I sell of various sizes. Now, I inputted every size from extra, extra small through 15X. But as you can see, there is no extra, extra small, there is no extra small, there's no small, there's no medium. The smallest one is large. Because the numbers that I sell of those small sizes are so small that they don't even get a label. Okay? The most I sell is a 4X, followed by a 6, and then a 5, and then a 3, and then a 2. A quick look of what that looks like overall. The majority of my sales are plus size 86.6 versus straight 13.2. Now, I will say that is slightly skewed, heavier than the population, right? But we have to think about why that is. Straight size people can shop anywhere. Plus size folks have a much more limited option. So the straight size people who are shopping for me, great. They are shopping for me for another reason. They like clothes, they like the ethics, they like the models I use, they like my social media presence, etc. But some of those plus size people, I'm their only option. So this is converted over to actual dollars, not just order numbers, but how much money people are spending. And again, 4X is the largest amount of money. And then if we look at that on a bar graph by category, like I kind of group the sizes, 4X to 6X blows everybody out of the water. Now, something else that's important to note is that very often, I don't have this exact stat, but it's definitely something I know for sure. The majority of brands that do consider making clothes for plus size folks, they will very often stop at a 3X. So it does not surprise me that the folks that live right outside that box are my best selling customer, right? But another thing I like to point out is that the number that I sell of medium to extra larges is almost identical to the number of 7X to 9X. So that is not a grouping of people that just should not be served. If we think that, of course, I would sell medium to extra large, wouldn't I? Then you should also be thinking, of course, I sell 7X to 9X. Why wouldn't I? So, obviously, this is something that I feel very passionate about morally. I think everyone deserves equal access to clothes. But if we just want to look at business, if you only want to just make money, if I stopped at extra large, which is the size I wear in my clothing brand, I would lose 88.8% of my revenue. If I stopped at 3X, I would lose 61.8% of my revenue. And if I stopped at 6, which is kind of the next cutoff at a lot of plus size brands who do go past 3, they'll very often then stop at 6, I would lose 15.9% of my revenue. So, not a small chunk to lose. So now I want to talk about action items, right? And I group them by type of person that might be in this room. Because we all come from different backgrounds. So first thing I want to talk about is just if you're a consumer. So you're not a fashion designer, you're not an educator, you're not interested in being part of this industry. All you do is shop. That's it. You want to be interested, you want to be involved. If you wear straight sizes, I encourage you to only shop at stores that also carry plus sizes. Instant inclination is to say, that's too hard. I would limit so many. Right, that's the point. Right? We should be giving our money to companies who support our values. And if you also believe that plus size people should have the same access to clothing that you do, then you should give your money to brands that are doing that. Second, also if you wear straight sizes, I encourage you to reach out to brands that only carry straight sizes and ask them to expand. When they push back, which a lot of them will, please use my statistics. Explain to them why they are missing out on an important sector of the population. And listen, it might not work. They might not care, right? But it's something that we can do. And then for my folks who wear plus sizes, obviously, wear what you can find. However, if we're talking about sustainability, I would encourage you to look for smaller businesses to support. I would encourage you to shop for timeless classics that you can wear for a long time, that you can extend the life of your garments, and rewear them with pride. You know, there's a whole push right now to make sure that people do not feel shame for repeating outfits. You know, the idea that like every time you leave your house, you can't wear something that you were wearing before because somebody might see you and realize, oh, you already wore that. Of course, it's in my closet. I'm going to wear it again. So rewear things. And then also learn some basic mending so that if something happens to your garment, you don't immediately throw it out. Now, I don't expect folks to become a fashion designer or even learn how to sew a full garment. But there are resources, of which I have a bunch personally, on learning, you know, how to sew a button, how to sew up a small hole, whether that's holes in the middle of a garment or if it's on a seam, which honestly is easier. How to cut off tags that are annoying to you that maybe you would keep you from wearing something, right? So if you are interested in those free resources, if you look up Smart Glamour, if you go to our Instagram, smart_glamour, I have videos of all of those things for free. You can watch me explain it. They are captioned. I take my time, etc. If you really want to learn more than that, I do also have online classes at smartglamour.com that will teach you a little bit more. But for just the basics, closing up a hole, threading a needle, cutting off tags, replacing a button, and actually even adding a dart to something that doesn't fit you well. Sounds very complicated, but it's not super, super hard. So I do also have a video of me doing that. Okay, so for our merchandisers and or resellers, so folks who are not looking to be a fashion designer, but are maybe in charge of the merchandising for a designer or for a store, for a boutique, or are interested in opening a store or boutique, but you're not going to sell your own things. You're going to sell other people's products. First thing, if you have a website, you need to make sure that your size charts are easy to find, up to date, accurate, and detailed. The amount of times I go to websites and there is no size chart, I don't understand. How do you expect people to buy things online? We're just guessing. Don't do that. Especially if we're talking about sustainability, because you're going to buy it. Maybe you buy 2 or 3 and you try them all on and you send them back. Bad, right? But again, that's not on the consumer. That's on the person who's making that website. There needs to be a size chart and it needs to be easy to find. I recently, when I was doing research into some of these sustainable brands, I found a sustainable brand based in New York City who only makes like t-shirts and tank tops, not like a whole thing. But their size chart said that they made, or their sizes said that they made up to a 4X. And I was like, ooh, great. But what does that mean? Looked high and low for a size chart on this company's page. Does not exist. So I sent a customer service email and said, hi, I'm looking at this product. Sent the link to the ribbed tank top, because it's like a fitted tank, not just a tee. And was like, I'm just curious what chest measurement this size corresponds to. And they basically wrote me back saying that, oh, we don't have that information. If you just tell me the size that sometimes you wear in other brands, I can suggest. No. Okay. Also, if this company is selling clothes and they're selling a fitted tank and they don't know what the chest measurement of the tank is, I mean, I don't want to buy that tank anyway. Right? I don't want to guess. I don't want to get something that I told them they guessed would fit me and then it doesn't fit me and then I got to deal with all that. No. So if you're in a website, absolutely do that. Second thing, offer the same designs in plus and straight sizes. If a designer or a wholesaler does not offer the same options, don't stock them. And I know, again, there might be some pushback because that's not an easy thing to do. I have a close friend who has a store in Greenpoint, and her original idea was to have only things made in the USA. She very quickly expanded that because she was having a hard time finding enough products that were all made here. And instead she expanded to made ethically, but made everywhere. And then she would put notes on where things were made. She stops her stock at large or extra large. And we've talked about it many times. She follows me. She knows my thoughts. So I try not to be too pushy about it. But when we talked about it, a lot of her feedback was that, wholesalers sell in what's called packs. So they'll sell a small, medium, large, 1, 2, 3, right? And you just order that pack and that's what you get. And a lot of wholesalers either don't make the plus size packs or they sell completely different things from one size pack to another size pack, right? So I'm not saying that there aren't obstacles and problems. There are. And also, wholesale designers, stop doing that. But where you can, insist on better, right? Push for better, ask for better. Third one, I cannot stress enough. If you sell products and they do not all come in the same size, you have to have a size filter. Think about how much it would suck to open every single product one after another, hoping that the one you like comes in your size, to just find over and over and over and over and over and over that it doesn't. No one should have to do that. And I've done that for research sake so many times. I've opened websites and opened a million tabs to be like, where's the one? Where's the one that comes in plus? So please have a size filter and please make sure it's accurate so that if you do want plus size folks to shop with you, you've got to make it as easy as possible for them to do so. And then last, please hire diverse models that accurately represent the consumer population and then treat them equally. Thank you. People exist in all shapes and sizes. People are buying clothes from you in all shapes and sizes. They deserve to see those clothes on people that look like them. And if the clapping, that seems most of you already agree with me, and my being emphatic about it is not enough, here are people's responses when you do this. Not going to go through every single thing, just call it a few things, right? So first person is mentioning that when you have models of different sizes, it also can be obvious that they're being comfortable and they're having a good time. People like to see that. People saying, I really appreciate the diversity on all different axes on the models of your site and the privileging of larger models. If larger people are the majority, then they should be the majority of your models. It's called accurate representation. I'm crying. Oh my God, this has changed my life. This person saying, I was scrolling through looking at what you had and I started crying again because seeing bodies that look like mine is so rare. It makes me so happy to see people that look like me. And then I love the idea of shop by using a model shaped like me. Brilliant. That's because I had a feature on my site that was a model directory and you could go to the model and then find what they were wearing. And then these are emails, that's unsolicited emails that people sent me through my contact page. So this is somebody who found Smart Glamour by reading a Forbes piece that I was included in. And it was, again, a listicle about 30 brands that carry plus sizes. And even in that article, again, this person was going through and being disappointed because they weren't included even in the places that make plus size clothing. My heart is racing. I'm nearly in tears. As somebody who's been wearing a 30 plus for a while, I'm used to being outside of most retailers, even plus size ranges. I'm thrilled to see the variety of styles, colors, sizes you offer. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I just need you to know I happened upon your site and I almost cried because of how beautiful it is. Every single site should look like yours. Thank you for being a bold leader. Shopping is exhausting and you made it a breeze. And then lastly, as I scrolled through, I found myself grinning, just smiling as I looked at these dresses on all different models. Every single model is beaming. I love it. Thank you for that shopping experience. So moving on to designers in the room. First one is an industry controversial point, but I'm sticking to it. Your sample size should be the average size person. It does not make sense to sample in a size 6 and only sample in a size 6 and not do anything else. The point of a sample size is to get a good idea of the fit and then improve from there. You should be doing that on a person that represents the average size person. I don't know why that's not common sense. Secondly, you should continue to do your own size research. Take measurements of customers, of models, of your friends, of your family. Keep track of this research. Pay attention to these numbers. Look for patterns. It will only make your fit better. Tangential to that is don't just grade up blindly. Use the research that you have. Pay attention to proportions, heights, rises, lengths, limb circumferences. So a class that I teach right now in continuing education is called Inclusive Fashion Pattern Making. It's not solely a pattern making class. It's a little bit of lecture, a little bit of design, a little bit of draping, a little bit of pattern making. But the main point of the class is to learn how to size something up or down correctly. These folks in my class, they're all using the dress forms that are there, which are just a size 10. And then I am bringing in 2 models, one who is very close to the average size person and one who is larger than that. They are then choosing the model they'd like to use as a fit model, and they're altering their pattern to fit that person. So I don't just have the bust, waist, hip. We have everything. We have neck measurement. We have length from shoulder to apex, from shoulder to waist. We have all limb circumferences, etc. Those things are incredibly important, and they shouldn't be forgotten. I know probably some pattern makers are not going to love me saying this, because inputting something into a pattern making software and just going increase by 1 is very easy, but it's not going to get you good fit. We need to pay attention to the reality of humans. And, humans don't come off of conveyor belts. So no matter what you do, there are going to be people that don't perfectly fit your clothing, right? Because you're doing your best to mass produce it. Unless, one of the big reasons Smart Glamour was made to order and customizable was so that I could avoid that problem. So it didn't matter. I could make things fit whoever. But that's very, very time consuming to do. So if you're going the way of, using a factory, producing things, fine. Lots of people do it. At least do it in a way that makes sense and gets you good fit. I do some tech design consulting, and I was working with a small business who does inclusive clothing. She does 7X. And I helped her go through every single pattern and adjust them accordingly based on my data and research. She then gave that data to her pattern makers, and they were like, no, we want to just make everything go evenly. And she came back and told me they said that, and I was like, no, you tell them, no. You gave them the numbers, put them in. So you are going to get pushback, but it's worth it. And you'll get way less returns, which is a good thing for business, but also a good thing for sustainability. And then last thing is mean what you say what you mean. If you do not make clothing for everyone, do not say that you do. There are lots of brands out there that like to cash in on inclusion by saying, I dress all bodies. We make clothes for everybody. There will be someone that you don't make clothes for. Now imagine being that person going to a bunch of sites repeatedly, hearing all bodies, everybody, but never them. That's harmful. Don't do that. Just don't lie. Just use different words. You can make the same thing that you made before. Just be honest about what you're making. For educators in the room, first thing's probably the easiest thing you can do. Include images of plus-size people in your reference photos. If you're using reference photos for sketching, if you're using reference photos for design, bring some plus-size people in to the mix. Second thing is advocate for a diverse range of dress and pant form sizes. This is a little bit more complicated because you're not the one buying the dress forms. But it's something that we should all be working towards. I firmly believe that it does not make sense to only have size 6, size 10 dress forms and call it a day. Then, educate your students on the reality of U.S. consumer sizes. Dispel myths about plus-size consumers not wanting fun, exciting clothing. It's kind of 2 things in one. But now we all know the reality of consumers. Go tell other people, okay? Especially if you're a teacher, especially if you're teaching fashion design students. They need to know this, so please tell them. And then the second part of that is not letting them believe that plus-size people don't want fun clothes. I used to teach a business class at Parsons. A very well-meaning student raised her hand and asked me, Well, it was the day we were talking about plus sizes. But I want to make like really avant-garde, funky clothes. Don't plus size people not want that because they just want to hide their bodies? And listen, I'm very glad that I created a safe enough space that she felt she could ask that question. And I really don't think she meant it with malice at all. If she was just like, this is what I've been told though, you know? And so I answered her question with a question, which was, do you think all straight size people only want one type of clothing? She said no. So why are we treating plus size people like that if we don't treat straight size people like that? And then lastly, another slightly controversial one, think critically about the use of the 9 to 10 head croquis. Encourage some diversity in your croquis bodies. I teach some private fashion illustration. I taught some fashion illustration to pre-college students over the summer. Every time I gear up to teach another fashion illustration class, I look again for the reason that we use these elongated bodies. And other than it's just the standard, I really can't find a reason. And it's just the standard because we live in a society that thinks tall, thin people are prettier. But it's not necessary. Is it a question or a comment? Yes, of course. Thank you for asking. So the fashion figure that you illustrate to put clothes on is called a croquis. And the 9 to 10 head part is the proportion. So the size of the head you draw, 9 or 10 of them down is the full body. And then at certain points is where you put certain parts of the body. And the way that it is designed, the legs are like 2/3. So, and I know that sounds funny, but it's very true. It's what everyone does. And there's really, really no reason to do it. Like, why can't we just draw croquis that look like people? I don't know. Okay. And then for everybody here, please do the work to unlearn ingrained fatphobia. Find the roots of your negative opinions and bias. So, listen, I'm sure no one would raise their hand and say in this room, especially because you came to this talk, I don't like plus size people, right? But the fact is we live in a society that doesn't like plus size people. And some of that has crept into you. So you need to really think about it and ask yourself, why do I feel this way whenever it bubbles up? And something that I really like to ask myself when it comes to things like this, or even like when I feel bad about myself, is who is profiting off of me feeling this way? Who is profiting off of me not liking plus size people or not thinking they deserve the same things that I do? Most of the time, it's going to be something like billions of dollar weight loss industry, right? There's no reason to discriminate against folks that are bigger than you. So just constantly be doing that work internally. Then listen, learn, engage, stay open to the experiences of others who are different from you. This goes for everything. But if you're a straight size person and you've never thought about any of this before, now it's the time to start. Now it's a time to listen to other people that this affect. And also I do want to tie that into a lot of times plus size or companies that decide to like branch out slightly into plus sizes will then come back, oh, it didn't sell, or it didn't work well, I'm not doing it anymore, etc. And in my opinion, a lot of times that happens because those are folks who just heard numbers and said, okay, I better get on this, and like got a few things made in those sizes, but they didn't do anything else. They didn't offer equity in these clothes. They didn't offer the same designs in these clothes. They didn't bring in models that are wear these sizes. They didn't reach out to plus size influencers. They're not paying attention to conversations on the internet. They're not caring for those customers the way they care for straight size customers. So of course their items are not selling because the people are here and they are underserved. They're the people you should be targeting 100%. But also let me tell you that a lot of them have been ignored by the fashion industry for their whole life. So not only do you need to target these folks by making clothes for them, but you also have to make sure that they know that you care about them. They deserve all of the work that you do for straight size folks, and honestly deserve it more because they've been without. And then last thing here is remove the hierarchy of bodies. Do not participate in negative self-body talk, and don't equate fat with bad and thin with good. So this is something that sneaks in all the time. It sneaks into my classes. and I find quick ways to kind of redirect, As I said, I teach for continuing ed. I teach a lot of adults who are coming to sew as a hobby. And we'll start doing measurements. They're measuring themselves to make themselves a pair of pants. In almost every class, somebody says something about I measured it's huge or whatever. First of all, a lot of times that measurement is my measurement. So let's be aware when we're talking about ourselves, we're also talking about other people, and the people in the room can hear you. Secondly, there's nothing wrong with being that size. There's nothing wrong with being bigger than that size. Again, this is just the societal stuff we are ingrained to think. That doesn't make it doesn't make it kind. It doesn't make it right. So please do your best to control the negative self-talk that you do, and then also the hierarchy of bodies that you are saying, putting out into the world, and that you're also putting out by your actions. Okay. Question time. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand. We do have this mic here so everyone can hear you, or you can stand up and talk really loud, but we are filming this for folks, so please come to the microphone. Anybody?
Sure. Not what I believe, but the argument that I see is if you provide said sizes, you are endorsing plus size life. And I'm sure you've gotten this argument all the time, so please tell me how you articulate that. That might be shared with people who are extremely ignorant or of lower intelligence capacity.
Thank you for the question. Let's take water. So yes, I have heard things like this before. And in general, before I answer the specific question, I want to kind of give my rule for interacting with people that ask antagonizing questions on the internet. There are people that do it in good faith that just are interested. And then there's people that are doing it to be rude. Sometimes it's a little hard to tell the difference. So, bet on the better and answer. As soon as they start going down the other path, delete and block. Not worth your time. Now, to answer the specific question, the first thing I would say is that everyone deserves clothing. No matter what you think about these people, they exist. They need to put clothes on their body. They need to walk around clothed. So how you feel about someone's body size is irrelevant when we're talking about whether or not they should have clothes. The second thing I would possibly quickly say is that people are diverse and have been diverse since the beginning of time. The reason that we mostly see thin people or only see thin people in a lot of media Mike, there we go. Because people were even more fatphobic then, and we just did not lift them up. We did not allow them into spaces. It does not mean that they weren't here. Plus size people have always been here, will always be here, and basically get over it. Any other questions? Yeah, can you come up?
So one of my questions that I have is, what are your thoughts on plus size people buying from fast fashion? Because I feel like one of the big arguments is they want plus size people to go to sustainable areas because there's going to be better. But because they don't carry their sizes, a lot of us go to fast size fashion because at the end of the day, those are the people that have their sizes. So what are your thoughts on that for people who want to find clothes for themselves, but they can't afford enough to go to these sustainable places, or they just don't carry them?
Thank you so much. I have a few different thoughts, especially because the last thing you brought up was about affordability. So the first thing, and the reason why when I was giving my note to plus size people, the beginning of that note was wear what you can find, right? The fact of the matter is the majority of the fashion industry is not catering to you right now. So if you can only find something at a specific store, even if that store is not sustainable, buy it. However, change your mindset about how you treat those clothes. Take care of them, mend them, keep them a long time. Fast fashion model is a bad one, yes. If it's your only option, you have to use it, but you use it in a sustainable way, right? I do want to touch on the affordability aspect, right? So fatphobia is not something that only affects fashion. Surprise, surprise. It affects the whole society. And very often, plus-size people are discriminated against in the workplace, which means they do not make as much money as straight-size people, generally. So affordability is a big thing. And actually, in creating my brand, accessibility, not just in size, but in cost, was something very important to me. So just because I can make an incredibly fancy garment with linings and zippers and fancy welt pockets and notch collars doesn't mean I have to, because something that's very complicated is going to take me longer. So I specifically design with an ease of production so that my clothes can be more accessible cost-wise. That doesn't mean that plus-size people don't deserve to have those expensive options also. That's just a specific brand choice that I made for my company. And if somebody wants something super fancy and has the money to spend for it, I'm happy to make a custom one-off for people. I make custom like wedding garments for people all the time. And those are more expensive, right? Because more time goes into them. But it also is very important, in my opinion, to think about cost when talking about sustainable clothing and making sure that there is something, it's not going to be $5. That's not possible. But it will be more on par with something like a Torrid price, right? Which is not fast fashion, but it's also not ethically produced. So if you can kind of find the middle ground there and help people out in terms of accessibility cost-wise, that's also really important if you care about catering to plus-size folks. Any other questions?
Hi, my name is Meg Joseph. I'm a professor here at FIT. I brought my entrepreneurship, innovation, and creativity class with me here tonight. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you faced early on. You said you get no funding, no paid advertising. Can you talk a little bit about who were early supporters of the brand, how you got the word out, things like that?
Sure, so happy to. First thing I want to say is that running a small business by yourself with no funding is really hard and tiring. If you are not super passionate about it, do something else. Do something easier. It is really, 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 really hard. But that being said, when I get messages and comments like some of the ones I've read to you here, that makes it worth it, right? So also another tip is to make sure that your category of small business is also important to you. Like, obviously, if it's just important enough to you to like make pretty things and offer them to people, great, do it. But if you can find another reason to tie it to, it really, really helps when it gets tough. So as far as funding goes, when I launched the company, I did an Indiegogo. This was in winter 2013, spring 2014. It was like all of those crowdfunding things were very new. And I raised just $4,000. So not a lot of money, but not nothing. I created a collection. I got up a website with the help of my father, who knows a little bit about computers. And I created, I launched it with like an inclusive runway show. And the $4,000 covered all that. The first year of my business, I was also doing freelance work. Now, freelance work specifically over a full-time salary job, in my opinion, is also very important. It's really hard to get up super early, go sit in an office, work really late, come home, try to eat something, and then in the like 2-3 hours you have before you go to sleep, you're trying to do a business. I mean, if you can do it, do it. But definitely working freelance cleared up a lot of space for me, a lot of time for me, and also, honestly, a lot of emotional energy. Sometimes you come home from a corporate-y job and you're just like drained. You can't imagine having to expel more emotional energy into something. That's really tough. So for the whole first year, I did freelance alongside Smart Glamour. And as it grew, I just took less and less jobs until it was. Now, as far as getting the word out, It's hard to even imagine this now, but Instagram really only became a thing like 2012. I made my business in 2014. This was at a time where Facebook did not own Instagram. There were no business pages. There was an idea of influencers, but there was no like regulation around it. People didn't have to say this is an ad. Like none of that existed. There weren't actually even ads on Instagram yet. So long time ago. I started building an Instagram following organically. You know, obviously it started with just people I know, my friends and family. And then I started creating content that people wanted to share. And if people share your content, you can grow a following, right? Also at that time, I started partnering with now what we would call micro-influencers. Back then, there wasn't even really a word for it. Just people who had, you know, I had around 300 followers. They had 1,000. Great. I make them an outfit. They agree to post it. They get to keep the outfit. Trade. That did a lot for me at the beginning. Then over the next few years, I did like a few more small mini raises where like I raised 7,000 one time. I think just 1,500 another time. The 1,500 was like, oh my God, my sewing machines are breaking down on me. I need to replace my equipment. The 7,000 was to like get into a studio space and hire some assistants and kind of try to expand a little bit. I was trying to raise way more than that. But that's what I got and that's what I used. And over the years, I have done all types of things to get people to know about the company. And it doesn't matter how much you do and how long you're around. Somebody's still going to be like, oh my God, I've been here. Especially if you are making a brand that has a message that's really important to you, don't be afraid to tie that message into your content. So, at the beginning, when I rattled off some of those publications that have talked about me, a lot of that is coverage of the why of my brand. And I would create campaigns, not just collections, but campaigns, so specific photo shoots that gave me an opportunity to talk about these things. So campaigns around size, campaigns around body image, campaigns around putting disabled folks into modeling campaigns, putting trans folks into modeling campaigns that showed the clothes, yes, was always an opportunity to shoot more clothes, but also talked about the things that were important to me, and that's the kind of content that people want to share. And then once you are mentioned by enough people and you have some good SEO, when people start making listicles and they're Googling sustainable brand that makes plus size clothes, guess what? I'm going to pop up. And they're going to put me in a listicle. And then that's just going to keep going. So sometimes it was me pitching things. Sometimes it was somebody, BuzzFeed, including me something, and I didn't realize it until I saw the clicks. So it's really a combination of a lot of things because, to put it very frankly, unless you have minimum 10 grand a month to put into social media ads, boosts, ads, etc., it's not worth doing. You're burning money. I've tried it every way. So really focus on creating interesting, authentic content that you believe in and that connects with people. And they will share it and it will grow.
First of all, thank you so much. This has been amazing, this whole presentation. My name is Anastasia White. I'm an adjunct professor here, and I'm also an entrepreneur of a swimwear brand called Crescent Blue, BLEU. And Mallorie, a lot of what you said resonates so much with me because I started my brand because I felt like swimwear did not address the needs of the swimwear body, like what women, femmes want when they're shopping, how it makes them feel when they're in the dressing rooms. And I am an online brand. Right now, I am carrying small to extra large. One thing that I am always talking about when I speak to my online customers is expanding. I even have a little survey asking for people to sort of like answer the questions. What are they looking for? What sizes are they looking for? Colors and stuff like that. One of the things I do come up against with manufacturers, I do manufacture overseas in Bali, and that is with regards to expanding and that whole size pack thing. I make my own size packs, but there's the minimum of the actual style, which is the pattern, being a number of a certain size, certain color, certain body. But as you expand, as you say, there's different limb circumferences. It's not just add a size, so then that becomes an entirely different pattern if you're doing it the right way. And I love what you exposed about the size charts, because a lot of companies come across and they say, oh, we're plus size. We offer up to a size 3X, and the 3X literally fits someone who's like a size 16, maybe. And it's infuriating to see that. So I don't know. I guess I'm trying to figure out what advice do you have in that gray area when you're, on the brink of expanding and authentically expanding and serving a larger size population, but still being held to those constraints that you have to work with in the industry?
Great question. Thank you. The first thing I'll say really quick is I could do a whole nother talk on size charts. There's so much to say about size charts. And the one thing I will say quickly is always check it, because sizes are not the same. I have some data on that on my Instagram if you're interested in diving deeper into that. I do it a lot. I show it and explain it and whatnot. Now, when it comes to expanding and the limitations on that, my first thought, which might not be a popular thought, is to get rid of the small sizes, which I know might seem like an extreme thing to do. But as I mentioned, I truly do believe that the sample size should be the average size person. So while I think it would also be an expensive choice, if we have limited options, then we need to think about what are we doing with those limited options. If I can only afford 5 sizes, does it make sense to make a small? Right? If it's important to you to serve the folks that are underserved, then maybe you're not serving the folks that are overserved. And, when I was talking about the inclusive company that I did tech design for, she goes small to 7X. And the reason that she decided on that had to do with all of these things. So the first part of it was the production company she was deciding to work with gave her a limit of how many sizes she could do at a certain price range, right? Then a thing that's important to her, she is plus size. She wears about a 5X. And she has a lot of friends who are straight size. And she's always wanted to be able to wear the same clothes as them. So she really didn't want to let go of offering some of the straight sizes, because she wants to offer the same clothes to multiple sizes of people. Another thing that we then did to try to get as many sizes as possible is on my personal size chart for my company, I have an extra large and a 1X. Some companies will just do that as the same. An extra large has 1X in it, so that means an extra large and a 1X are the same. The reason I decided not to do that, first of all, I have no limits to how many sizes I can have. So who cares? Second thing is that there's a lot of straight size people who are used to being an extra large, and there's a lot of plus size people who are used to being a 1X. And I want them both to be able to go, oh, maybe that's me, without having to second guess. She combined those, so it goes small, medium, large, 1X, 2, and then another thing that she did is when she was thinking about what kind of items to make, she was trying to specifically design items that gave a little bit extra wiggle room, right? So this obviously, I'm sorry, is not going to apply to some a little bit because it's stretchy, but she's making loose fit things. She's making a pair of shorts that also have a elastic and a drawstring. So technically if you're between sizes, you could technically get the bigger size and kind of tighten it down. Not that any of those are perfect solutions, but especially when you're a small business doing your own funding, you got to do what you can do. And then my last little thought is I think it's really great that you're asking people for feedback. I do that all the time. The way that I ask my customers, what have you come to me specifically for? I ask questions constantly. What are you looking for, etc. What I will say about that is that if you're a company that does not currently make plus sizes, it's a little hard to get a lot of authentic feedback from plus size people because they may not feel like they can trust you yet, right? To like earn that vulnerability from them. Not all of them. Some of them will answer you, but it's almost like you have to like start a little bit before you jump in, right? I mean, especially if you're somebody who has some of the technical skills to do some things yourself, maybe you make some plus size clothes yourself so that you can show them on models, so that you can gain some trust. Maybe you even do like a pre-order situation so that you can get some funding up front and then be able to pay for the back end. You know, it's just a lot of creative thinking. In case the video didn't catch that, she was just saying that she has had worked with some influencers who are kind of on the cusp, but they're like 18, 20. So just feeling like you should be able to expand that to some other folks. Any other questions? I think we just went slightly over, although technically I have the room till 9. So if anyone has one more burning question, feel free to raise your hand. Yes. Hi.
I do have a question, and I will get to it in a moment. But really, I think if I could like offer some type of suggestion towards like what it is that you're saying, I think like the concept of marketing would be one that like if somebody who's interested in this topic should really explore a lot more. I definitely love fashion, and I think one way that I really am exposed to it is on the internet. Just like online shopping is huge. And then on Instagram, I've followed brands like Love Vera, which is a Black-owned company, and they do definitely promote all sizes. And then I know Skims, the company Skims, I guess as well as Good American, also have this body inclusivity theme or focus. So I think like marketing is amazing. What I would say to that though is that, one thing that you mentioned is like the concept of beauty. And I enjoy beautiful things, right? And I don't think that it's necessarily the size, although a lot of times it does seem that way. And I do agree, like what you described as what beautiful is what many people describe beauty to be. But I think beauty can also be expressed in other ways. So if we can like take that idea and then take the idea of marketing, you can kind of push that forward and make whatever we think people's view as not being beautiful, turn that into something that people view as beautiful. I think that could really work. Just going back to my other point. On Instagram, I don't know her name at all, but I remember the pictures that I saw. And I believe what she was doing was like, if I'm not mistaken, like taking photos from fashion that she's seen and then like making it her own. I really wish I remember her name, but what I saw was beautiful, right? And it wasn't a 6'3" blonde, blue-eyed person. So that's that. And then my question. I have 2, if that's okay. The first one is, do you think being plus size is healthy?
I think I'm not a doctor, so that's not on me to say. And I think health is not a prerequisite for clothing, and it shouldn't really be a topic of conversation when we're talking about clothes. I also think there's a lot of people who will never have access to health, whether they're plus size, whether they're disabled, etc. So like, it really just, it's not anyone's business.
Okay. And then I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Okay, so unless we have any other questions, I think we'll wrap it up since we ran over a little bit. Thank you all so much for coming. If you want to reach out to me at all, my FIT email is Mallorie_Dunn at fitnyc.edu, and you can also find me just by looking up Smart Glamour anywhere on the internet. Thank you so much.